Well, welcome back to the Boardroom Company Live, the podcast for professionals who are looking to get advice on how to build their board career. I'm your host, Naomi Kent, and today we're going to be discussing the important topic of sustainability and ESG. My guest today is one of the most knowledgeable on this topic. It's Andre de Freitas. He serves on boards and has spent his entire career in international socio-environmental institutions, championing for sustainability, accountability, and generally working to improve the way we live and work. We're going to be talking about sustainability, the role of the board of directors, and what questions you should be asking your leadership team. So welcome, Andre, to the podcast.
Hi, Naomi. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Let's kind of kick off first. I want to hear a little bit about your early life. Like, where did you grow up, and tell us about how you got into this career.
So I come from a fairly multicultural background. I was born in the U.S., but I grew up in Brazil. So my mother is the daughter of Italian immigrants in the United States. My dad is Brazilian, and that melting pot of Brazilian. And I grew up in Brazil, having some background with more international things. So, and in Brazil, of course, issues of forests and other things are quite present. Tropical forest in the Amazon, but of course the Atlantic forest, which is also a very important forest in the country.
And so were you sort of inspired by what you saw? I mean, when I was young, I remember hearing a lot about it too. There were stats coming out all the time about, the deforestation and things like that. Did you see that firsthand?
Yes, I saw that firsthand. The link of forest with my father was involved in some forest-related issues, so I got exposure since I was a young kid, and then started also the link of environment and agriculture as well, because Brazil is also a key agricultural country. So it's kind of bringing all those things together, and then deciding to do forestry as a career. So I studied forestry in college in Brazil, and then started working more and more on sustainability. It's interesting, the forestry sector has some of the most advanced discussions on sustainability, because I think even at the origins of the word sustainability, it was really about sustained yield. So if you go back to Germany in the 1800s and discussions on sustained yield in forests, that was a lot about where the origins of sustainability came. And then over time, it got expanded into something more, including other environmental dimensions, social dimensions, and right now the most widely accepted definition is our ability to fulfill our present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to fulfill theirs. The way I translate it in practical life is, how do you reconcile environmental, social, and economic issues in production and other ways?
And you've kind of achieved that, right, in your career, because I know you are currently the executive director of an organization that is championing for that, and you also sit on some boards. So tell us about how you got to where you are today and the work that you do today.
I'm working to do that. No, I work every day that's my driver, is trying to make a positive change in the world. And coming from this land-based natural resources background, started working my career basically on social issues, then on nonprofits regarding social and environmental issues, and trying to link to market solutions as well. So linking that aspect. I mean, you have to have all those foundations working: the social foundation, the environmental foundation, and the economic foundation. They all have to work together. If one of them doesn't work, then things do not last. So it's kind of trying to reconcile those things. And I started pretty much a technical career, and over time I kind of moved more towards management, and then started getting engaged in boards of directors. So I have over 25 years reporting to boards of directors, most of the time in nonprofits, and I have some close to 20 years being on boards of directors as well. Most of them in nonprofits, but some for profit as well.
So tell us about the boards that you're on today. I know there's one particular one that's quite interesting.
So currently, right now, I'm in the board of this international organization called Assurance Services International, ASI. It's a global organization. It's one of the top in the field of assurance in terms of social and environmental issues, sustainability matters. And I've been there since for about 6 years, more or less, as the in the board. And now since a year ago, I'm the chair of the board in that organization. So it's a global organization on sustainability and assurance. And it's all about how do we support different initiatives to make sure that they have trustworthy claims. So it's all about trust and how can society, companies, consumers trust claims that are being made on whatever product it is. Could be fish, could be palm oil, could be soy, could be wood products, different things. So it's about how can society trust sustainability claims that are in different sectors,
What,
products.
what exactly does sustainability mean for a company? And give us some examples of what it might mean. Because I'm assuming that different industries might define it a little differently. What does it mean, sustainability?
So it will go. So you have that kind of headline that I mentioned about ability of the present without compromising the ability of the future. But then for each industry, you have quite a lot of discussion to define what does that mean in terms of each industry. And the most credible definitions that I have seen are the ones that come from these multi-stakeholder processes where you do get that all those interests in terms of economic interests, production interests, environmental interests, and social interests, and you get them together to agree on what sustainability looks like. So it's not necessarily a fixed definition because it will evolve in time as society evolves and things get opinions on different things change. The definition of sustainability for a different sector will also keep changing. It will keep evolving. So what was considered sustainable in whatever forestry 30 years ago, now the bar is different in that because society itself has changed, and those definitions, the balance of those opinions have changed. So I would say the best definitions are coming from these strong, credible multi-stakeholder processes that then come with the definition of sustainability for different sectors. So that's kind
So
of like as a sector issue. At a company level, then you got to look into your own business and say, okay, what does sustainability mean for me? Maybe there's an external benchmark that I can refer to, but then there's also how do I as a company see these issues in terms of long-term viability of my work. So for example, in some of the like the chocolate industry could be, well, is climate change going to impact, or how is climate change going to impact cocoa supply? Uh, how are the social challenges that we face in cocoa? How can we address those? Be it in some cases, I think the industry has made a lot of progress, for example, in preventing child labor or addressing the issue of child labor in those supply chains. But there are other issues that are still need to improve. So it's interesting. I recently did a poll with my LinkedIn community on what people consider the most important element of responsible procurement. So thinking of procurement as one of the ways that companies can deal with sustainability in their businesses. And I gave people 4 options. I said, okay, well, is it no deforestation? Is it no human rights abuse? Is it production in balance with nature? Or is it farmers being able to get a living income? And this is specifically related to small scale farmers, which is, and the Solidaridad Network is our core focus is small scale farmers. That's my day job. I'm in different boards, but that's kind of an additional thing that I do as well, and I'm trying to do more of it. So is the results of that poll were quite interesting. 60% of people that responded said the most important factor was living income. Then the second one, clocking in at around 30, was production and balance for nature. And then you had 9 on no human rights abuse and only 1% on no deforestation. Completely unscientific, just kind of a temperature check. And I was more interested in the debate, the conversation about those issues, because all those 4 issues are extremely important for these supply chains, agricultural supply chains. But it was interesting to see where that's coming from. And if you think of the challenges that small scale farmers face in the world, poverty is one of the main ones. So we have roughly around the world 500 million small scale farmers, and most of them are poor or very poor. So addressing the issue of these farmers being able to make a decent living with their work is a key one in these supply chains. So for that sector, this is something that these companies and their boards should be worried about.
So tell me, it sounds like there's a number of things, right? It's like the environment, it's people, it's practices, it's this, doing the right thing. Are companies incentivized to do the right thing? Do you think that there's a reward that comes with that? And what does that look like?
Before.
Let's talk for a minute. Which countries do you think are leading the way in the sort of sustainability? Let's call it the war, right? Like we're trying to fight for it. We're trying to get ahead. Which countries have you seen? Because I know you work globally in a lot of the different boards you're on, and your executive director role as well. But are you seeing any that are really standing out as leading the way?
Well, I would say that there's this on different topics. Europe is, I think, quite ahead as a region, I would say, and then you have different places in Europe that are doing quite well. UK as well. I mean, Europe/UK, I think are doing quite well in terms of the sustainability front. If you look at depends on the issue that you look. So if you look at issues like protected areas, Costa Rica is an example that always comes to mind in terms of how Costa Rica was able to shift. And part of that, and that became like a strategic advantage for the country. Now people visit Costa Rica because of its sustainability credentials.
I actually went to Costa Rica, and you're absolutely right. And every time somebody says to me, "Hey, I'm going to Costa Rica," I say, "Oh, it's amazing. It's really environmentally friendly." Like I even say that. So yeah, it really stood out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating story because they did a great job in doing that, because they were largely a cattle ranching country that it wasn't doing that great, and they adopted this as really saying, look, we have already a sort of a strong foundation. Let's build on that, and let's really make the identity of the country linked to that. And now everybody sees Costa Rica as this amazing place in terms of that environmental aspect, in parks and nature and the volcanoes and beaches and all those things. So I've been to Costa Rica a few times over the years, and it's fantastic. I would highly recommend to anyone to go there in that sense. So that's another example that comes to mind. If you, I would say, there's interesting examples in Africa where some countries have banned use of plastic bags. In terms of so it's illegal to have supermarket plastic bags because the plastic pollution was becoming such an issue that the country said, okay, well, it's illegal to do so. And so you have different bright spots in different places of the world in that sense. My belief is that this is an inexorable change that is happening, and will continue overall moving forward on that. Sometimes we take a step backwards on some things, but as a society in general, I would say that more and more these are issues that society will value.
Let's talk a little bit about these artificial intelligence and some of the warehouses that are being built, because we're sort of hearing that there's a sort of environmental impact of some of the not the software, but the actual hardware, right, that is used to power AI. What are your thoughts on that? Again, what do you know? Because I think we hear different stories.
Okay. Well, what I want to say on that is this kind of at a high level. Two concerns would come to my mind. One is the demand for minerals and rare earth and other minerals that go into the hardware component of these just the computers that will go, and where is that coming from? Some of the sources in mining are quite challenging from either an environmental or social point of view. So there's countries in the world that are very strong in mining, that are strong suppliers of some minerals that quite frankly have very poor records in terms of sustainability, and that could be a concern, that if demand grows very strongly for that, then you have those conditions being perpetuated in that. So that's one, just kind of the supply of raw materials to go into those data centers and AI, whatever we want to call them, warehouses. The second one is energy, and that is one, and depends on how the energy is produced. There's a link to water, and I would say that there's that is something that potentially could be mitigated depending on your conditions with renewable energies or not. So that's another one. How do you balance that, and how is that surge in quick surge in demand for energy? How does that impact society as a whole? Be it in terms of, you could be raising consumer prices, or you could be having issues if you have if you're then all of a sudden faced with the if society chooses to build coal-fired power plants instead of putting so there's impacts that come with that uh, rapid increase in energy. So I would say, well, those are the two issues for me that I see into that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's like a lot of things. As a consumer, you don't always know, right? There's not a lot of visibility when you buy something, or is there? Is there visibility when I buy a product in the store? Is it labeled about the sustainability practices? Can I see that?
I think, well, sometimes it is. Now, the important thing is that you understand, that consumers understand what the labels mean, because there's, as in everything in this world, some of the labels are more based on sort of really quality standards and processes, and some maybe are not, are more along the lines of a self-declaration or something that maybe doesn't carry that much weight. So I think the important thing is that you look into these labels, and consumers understand what they mean. It's a tall order because consumers are also always worried about other things in their lives, getting their kids from school, making sure that whatever it is, the cost of living, and sometimes sustainability is not top of mind in terms of their choices. So there's a key role that I believe that is even more important than consumers, is for companies to uh, self-regulate on that, or choice edit in terms of what they offer to consumers in terms of sustainability products. So for example, there's an interesting case. Lidl, the supermarket chain coming from Germany, recently they announced that their own chocolate products will be they're working to produce them with living income in those supply chains that they source the cocoa from. So they, as a corporate, they're saying, I want to offer to my consumers chocolate products that are really kind of rewarding farmers in allowing them to have a decent income. I don't want to have my chocolate with my name linked to exploration of sort of very poor communities. So that choice editing, I think, is important. So more and more you see some those things happening also. But there are labels out there, and a key thing is always interesting to see who supports those labels. So
Mm.
I think that's always a good sign of saying, well, is how credible is a label in the market for sustainability.
And I think as a business, right, you sort of have to look at your audience, right, and see what do they want and give them options, as you said. Obviously, being on a board, and just for the people who are listening who serve on boards, what is the role of the board of directors when it comes to sustainability and the future of a business? Let's say Lidl, for example. Do you think the board were involved in that conversation or that
I,
decision?
I would say I would say yes. I think these are long term, and to some extent, as I mentioned, linked to, there's a link between values and risk, and in this case of cocoa, long term supply availability. Because if farmers cannot make a living, they'll do something else. As we've seen in parts of West Africa, farmers are letting gold miners come into the areas, and then the cocoa's gone, or the young farmers the young generation is not going to want to do farming and is going to move to the cities, because I mean, they don't want to do the back-breaking work for nothing, and they so there's this long-term kind of issues as well. So I'd say, yeah, boards can be quite involved in that. So if from perspective of a board, what do you want? I think there's an organizational culture aspect. Of course, CEOs are extremely important in that, but the boards can help shape that direction, and company values and alignment with that. I would say making sure that the company is doing sort of a good assessment of its risks, and one of the risks is related to sustainability in its different forms. Uh, as I mentioned, reputational, supply chain resiliency, all those things, and then pushing the organization also to say, okay, well, are there opportunities here that you could be as a company growing into and tapping into um, related to sustainability. How can we grow our business using this as becoming something that is more and more important to society? We also saw in the importance of sustainability. It has I believe it has downshifted a little bit, unfortunately, but I believe that's the blip. That's probably going to go back up again, in my opinion. Of sustainability, the importance of sustainability ratings for financial markets as well. So again, and and there's a speed that the pack can move with this issue of sustainability in that. So also in terms of access to finance and brand value and those things can help get the board's attention to these issues.
And I know you've served on boards, you've been serving on boards for a while, both as an executive, as a non-executive, and like you said, nonprofit and corporate. What do you personally enjoy most about being being on a board of directors?
So I love the feeling of being able to share some experience and add value. So I think that's something that motivates me. I often tell to the people I work with that there's an important thing in anything that I do, which is my emotional salary. So how I feel, and that's linked to being able to feel that I'm helping to improve things in the world, be it on the ground, sustainability, or be it on in terms of organization. I also enjoy the learning. So I think I have amazing board colleagues in some of the boards that I'm in, and it's always fascinating to learn from those different perspectives. They bring a lot of different things in my background, and I'm always eager to learn, and I feel very valuable. That's very valuable as well. And I like I think as I have evolved in my career as an executive, you start seeing you go from a very narrow focus to a wider focus, a broader focus. And I like that idea of this kind of like broad view. And boards help give me that as well. So I like that kind of overview of the business and thinking strategy long term and those things.
Yeah, because I'm sure they're bringing you onto these boards because you have this specific knowledge. But as you know, boards are not looking for just one person to do one thing, right? You have to be able to do a lot of things. So the fact that you're running a business now, I'm sure all of that is helpful. Do you think that there's one thing, and let's say people who are listening who are aspiring to be on a board, is there one thing that you would say to them that the boards absolutely need, like in terms of a experience or qualities or something?
Um, I would say that I don't think I can generalize for all boards. I think it really depends on the context of the organization, and maybe that's the way of looking at it, is how do you find the best fit of your abilities and the things that you can contribute to what an organization needs. And so I think that trying to find the fit is important. Uh, I think more. I don't think I can generalize on that. So I think different organizations will need different things, and focus on finding one that where you can add the most value. And it's all about adding value. That's what I would say.
So it's sort of looking a little wider, right, outside of your scope to see where are all the other things that you do. I love it. So anything going on in sustainability at the moment that's really interesting or really exciting that you'd like to share today?
Well, I think one of the things that fascinates me, Naomi, in the sustainability space is the revolution that we're seeing with energy and the cost of renewables having gone down tremendously. So now, in many circumstances, the cost of generating energy is cheaper with renewables than with fossil fuels. With the current now we're in March 2026 with the current Iran war that's happening and price of oil going 100 or above, that's becoming even clearer, and the risks associated to some of those fossil fuels and in terms of those supply chains. So I think that for me is one of the most interesting things that we are seeing in the world. And um, Europe for I think it was last year, Europe in several months of the year produced more energy with non-fossil fuel than with fossil fuels. You got Germany had some days a couple of years ago in terms of where you had renewables production being the highest source. So we're seeing that happening, and and it's fascinating. I think that is really going to change the world. I think so. So how do you scale up sustainability? Is when those solutions really become not only the best solutions for environment and social issues, but also because of their business case. And then that's it. Then of course you still have a lot of issues with subsidies for fossil fuels and that, but even then, I think that is what excites me the most is this future with renewable energy, because the economics have shifted.
Okay, and so I know just earlier you mentioned that there's been a slight, maybe not a downturn, but sort of a bit of a kind of lull, right? Where there's not maybe as much conversation about it. But then you said you predict that that's going to increase. Tell us about your predictions for the year ahead and possibly the next few years ahead.
Well, for me, this is linked to this pendulum movement that happens in politics in the world, and we are seeing different parts of the world that society is choosing, making political choices that are giving preference to other things, and I believe that that pendulum will swing back, and then as it swings back, these issues will get renewed attention to that. So it's not that they have disappeared, but I think they're being dampened a little bit, and I believe that will go back as you have these political things. So it's almost like you are in a growth curve, but is a little bit loopy. So if you look long term, you're growing, but maybe on the short term, you're going a little bit down, and then like that. That's at least how I see it, and I hope that's the case for all of us.
That's fantastic. Well, Andre, listen, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really enlightening. I feel your passion. I feel your values coming through for this space as well, and really, improving things, and certainly what you said about doing the right thing. And I think that's a very good message to send to businesses, boards, and people that are considering, what do we do with our business and how do we grow, right? Or how do we create the next best product for our consumers. So this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you for joining me. I'm sure we'll catch up again at some point in the future. So
thank you, Naomi. This was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.